What is a country? According to the standard definition, it is a nation with defined borders. Okay, well, that doesn't really help. What's a nation? A nation is a large body of people that share a common history, a common descent, and common laws. But what happens if you don't have any of those things? Well, then, my friends, you don't have a nation and you don't have a country. Simply put, that's not a political argument. That's the literal definition. The big story right now from Axios. Government eyes plan to give IDs to unauthorized immigrants. Well, that's one way to soften the blow. Framing is everything, right? We could also say the Biden administration is planning to give identification documents to illegal immigrants. We've already seen in places like New York and San Francisco attempts to allow non-citizens to vote in our elections. Okay, so back to the first question. If there are no borders and people can just enter whenever they want, you don't have a country. You may have a nation, but no country. But hold on. If there's no shared history among the people in this nation and the laws don't apply equally, then you don't have a nation either. And that's why, from what I see here, the United States is being torn apart. It is being gutted. It is slowly decaying and rotting from the inside. And the end result is probably going to be something drastic and dramatic. Now, I know that I often talk about the threat of civil war, what it really means. And it's kind of hard to pinpoint because depending on the story, I may say something like, this is it, we're in a civil war. And what I mean by that is fifth generational warfare, information, propaganda, etc. Not really fighting, just in conflict through information in an attempt to gain influence and power over certain people. It could be that you don't see that as a civil war, or it could be that a true civil war would be fighting in the streets between factions. Perhaps. What I can really just say is that we are in a conflict. We are in civil strife. You can call it whatever you want. Experts on civil war around the world say that we are about to enter insurgency, which could be officially more like the Bleeding Kansas phase of the Civil War. So we could be 10 years out. I don't know. I think based on the rate of information exchange and information warfare, it's probably closer to a few years as opposed to a decade, whereas Bleeding Kansas was like 7 years. The reason for this is ideology, information, and tribalism spreads much more rapidly because of social media than it did in the past. You know, if someone like John Brown walked up to someone today, pulled the trigger, well, that would be instant. Everyone would know what happened. Whereas with the John Brown raid, well, it took quite a long time for people to find out the dude had raided the armory in Harper's Ferry. So it could be very different. But there's also the fourth turning, which suggests that something big is coming now. And it may end in 2028. 2028 giving us the birth of a new kind of spring, a better time. Things begin improving. But the night is always darkest before the dawn. So with stories like this about non-citizens being given IDs and being given access to our public benefits, this may be that dark period. And the conflict may be the rise of Donald Trump, what we're seeing right now with the January 6th committee, with Steve Bannon about to be sent to prison or jail. I don't know exactly where they're going to be sending him. This could be the conflict. People will go to prison, and it may be that we've just moved away from the era of hard violence. Perhaps there will be no civil war in the sense of bloody street battles because Donald Trump is poised to win and he will purge the bureaucratic state. You know, far be it from me to be able to predict the future. It could be that Donald Trump wins and that precipitates some kind of more serious conflict when the quote unquote deep state refuses to back down and be convicted of their crimes. People like the Biden family, Hunter Biden, Joe Biden. Maybe they'll just say, you know what? No. Well, before we get into all of that, we'll start from the beginning. Why the government is going to give IDs to people who are not citizens of this country and grant them benefits. This, of course, is shocking many people. It's already been referred to by many on the right as an invasion. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com and become a member to support the work we do here, but better yet, to get access to our new shows that will be rolling out. Well, they'll be rolling out consistently. We've got big plans. We've got Tales from the Inverted World, Ghosts of the Civil War, Season 2 of the show, hour-long episodes. As a member, you get access to this show. It's really good. Check it out. If you're into true crime, history lessons, murder mystery, we've got stories. It's Ghosts of the Civil War. I mean, it's kind of perfect for a video like this. Stories of cities being burned by the North and people in the South having their homes and farms just ransacked. Shane Cashman went down to Georgia to talk to people about the history and to try and find the lost Confederate gold. We got comedy specials, more stuff rolling out. And if you like the work that I do here, you can just support us directly at timcast.com, but also get access to Timcast IRL uncensored episodes Monday through Thursday. Don't forget to like this video, smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show. Let's read the first story from Axios. Government eyes plan to give IDs to unauthorized immigrants. The Biden administration plans to test providing temporary ID cards to unauthorized immigrants, awaiting a final decision on their cases, according to two government sources familiar with the planning. Why it matters. Recent border crossers and other unauthorized immigrants, I like how they say that, unauthorized, in the U.S. often do not have IDs, making it more difficult to access housing, healthcare, transportation, and other benefits. Officials are considering a pilot program to relieve some of those burdens, while also incentivizing more frequent communication with law enforcement throughout the complicated court process, the sources said. Don't forget, congressional members included $10 million for the program, which is called the ICE Secure Docket Card Program, in the fiscal year 2023 appropriations bill. The administration is hoping to get needed congressional approval before the end of September to roll out a pilot before a potential Republican takeover in November. Now let's slow down there a minute. I'm not going to come out here and just scream the end is nigh because of this. Let's talk about the real issue, the pros and the cons. The argument from Democrats and Biden is when people enter into this country illegally, we can't track them. And when we do arrest them, they don't show up for court proceedings. If we give them ID cards, which allow them certain benefits, they're more likely to show up. I think it is a fool's errand, and I do not believe the argument for 1 second. That's the argument. I'm not trying to straw man. That's the steel man argument. They say, we'll give them some benefits. They won't just run away because often they don't even come back. So you mean to tell me that someone who traveled thousands of miles to get here illegally, crossing the border, is going to risk deportation in exchange for what? No, they will avoid you at all costs, regardless of whether or not you give them an ID card. Now, also, I don't think these ID cards are going to look like any standard ID, like they can use it to vote or anything like that. The point I'm trying to bring up when I do the whole intro bit saying the end of a nation is that they are creating a kind of documentation for people who are not citizens. The government will issue documents for people who are not citizens of this country to live here, to receive resources from our public coffers. I don't see it working out the way they think it'll work out. I see this as the erosion, the peeling of the veneer, the stripping away of the outer layer, the outer shell, towards the creamy nougat center that is the strength of this country. Without the defense, without being able to secure our borders, we do not have a country. And when non-citizens are counted in the census, which grants states voting power in our presidential elections, then you don't have a nation. And when half of the there's two political parties, but when half the major voting bloc in this country say they don't care that these people are not sharing a history with us, sharing values, sharing laws, well, now you've got real problems, because let's be real. These people broke the law and they get away with it. If there are no shared laws, there is no nation. What do you really have? Well, you have a United States whose nation is but Swiss cheese. Certain areas of the state are holes in the nation. What I mean is, it used to be from California to Washington, D.C., or to Maryland, however you want to state it. There was a shared value. There were shared laws. Now you have California that says we're not going to abide by this law. Even though the federal government says, here's the immigration law set forth, California says, nope, we ain't following it. Okay. Well, you can already see they are bringing in non-citizens, giving them benefits. They don't share a history or value system with us, nor the laws. We do not have a nation. If this continues, There won't be one. They go to say, details of the program and who would be enrolled in a pilot are not yet decided. Generally, ID cards would be provided to migrants not in detention centers who illegally cross the U.S.-Mexico border, or others without legal status going through the lengthy immigration or removal court process. Yes, you're like, we're going to kick you out of this country you just traveled 1,000 miles for. Here's an ID card. Come back if you want to keep your benefits. And they're going to be like, nope, I ain't leaving. I'm staying here. Why would they want to be kicked out? I mean, look, Democrats talk about it all the time. They talk about how my neighbor is being threatened with deportation. That's not okay. They want to keep them there. From Fox News. Illegal immigrant gotaways crossing U.S.-Mexico border number more than 500,000. Average of over 55,000 known gotaways per month. Now, again, to steal, man, they argue if you give these people IDs and promise them shelter and food, they're not going to get away. But that's crazy to me because it's like someone who's willing to cross 90 miles of desert, thousands of miles and ride on top of trains, they're not going to be thinking about getting a nice apartment with some food in exchange for potentially being deported. They're going to say, no, I'm going to avoid that. But let's talk about what our friends over in Texas and Arizona are doing, maybe even soon to be Florida. Sending these illegal immigrants to D.C. and convincing conservatives it's a bold move. I love this. Conservatives are like, they're sending the illegal immigrants to D.C. Shows you. And I'm like, so they're sending immigrants from the border deep into the heart of the country? Maybe they should send them back to their homes instead of to D.C. Now, D.C. apparently is concerned, and New York, because their homeless shelters are being filled up by non-citizens. Yeah, Texas and Arizona may think it's funny, because now they're going to send those politicians to D.C. they're going to send the illegal immigrants to the politicians in D.C. And then those D.C. politicians will regret that. They don't care. They don't live there. They have offices there. And some of them have dwellings there for the purpose of working in federal government. But they can always go home. They don't need to deal with the problem. And then the federal government can just take these people and send them wherever they want. None of that's actually solving anything. The New York Post says, government using charities to hide just how much money is going to illegal immigration. Yeah, it's just, there you go, my friends. When New York says that they've got a homeless crisis because non-citizens are being sent there, and you've got these states laughing about how they're sending non-citizens to D.C. or whatever, this is what you get. New York City's non-citizen voting law is struck down. A state Supreme Court judge from Staten Island said the measure, which would have allowed more than 800,000 non-citizens to vote, violated the state constitution. We're lucky enough to have that. But what do you think happens when you get 1 million, 2 million, 3 million non-citizens all there? What happens when those 3 million citizens all protest? Non-citizens, I'm sorry. What happens when 3 million people protest in New York City? Maybe you don't get all of them. Maybe you get 10%. Just 10%. Not even, 90% of them now, they go off and they run away. 10%. 300,000. If 10% of those non-citizens, 80,000, went to New York and protested, they would cripple the city. And then what do you have? You have a bunch of people who aren't citizens disrupting your city. What do you call that? No, seriously, what do you call it? Seriously. The law was struck down. We're lucky enough we have that. The New York Times reports the measure, which was passed by the city council in December, would have allowed more than 800,000 permanent legal residents and people with authorization to work in the United States to vote for offices such as mayor and city council. Are you insane? This is it. This is the breakdown. This is the erosion, man. They're not talking about illegal immigrants getting in. They're talking about people who are authorized to work and legal residents being allowed to vote. There is a difference between a citizen and a legal resident for this reason. It's funny. We talk about the trope from Starship Troopers. Service guarantees citizenship. Well, this is basically what it is. You can live here. You can't vote. The Democrats are trying to get rid of that and say, you can come here and get a work permit and then you can vote. So what happens? They vote to gut the system. With no shared values, this is what you'll get. And we've seen it. The left laments. They talk about the bygone era where you had to be a male landowner to vote. And they said, I can't believe that's how it used to be in this country. And the reason that it was that way was because men were the heads of household. They were the ones who went to these meetings, and you had to own land because they didn't have IDs, and that's how you proved you lived there. Eventually, they were like, hey, most people are renting. They don't own the land. They need a right to vote too. What happened? Now you have people like Andrew Yang, and he's like, we're going to move to Georgia so we can help the Democrats. And it's like, that's sickening to me. You don't live there. You have no shared values with these people. There it is. When people like Andrew Yang say they're going to move to Georgia so they can vote to sway the election, you as a Georgian recognize you don't know our history, you don't share our history, you don't know the problems we face, and you would vote for someone who would gut our system and you don't even live here? What do you think that means for the U.S. if we go down this path? It means, ladies and gentlemen, I guess the end is nigh for this country. ABC 7 News with a headline that you know Tim Pool has to talk about. 50% of Americans believe in impending civil war in next several years, survey finds. I wonder what the delineation will be. I wonder what the demarcation will be. Not the Mason-Dixon line, my friends. It's something else. It could be states that allow child sex changes and states that don't. It could be immigration-free states and anti-immigration states. I don't know. It could be Democrat, Republican. ABC 7 News reports. As January 6 Capitol attack hearings were broadcast across the nation Thursday night, a new report by UC Davis shows the divide in America may be even greater than thought. The study found that just over 50% of Americans believe that in the next several years, there will be a civil war in the United States. It's definitely a crazy time in our country right now, and I don't think we've seen such division in some time, said Corrine Knowles of Livermore. There was even a tense moment at this town hall meeting, one held by Congressman Eric Swalwell in Livermore, when a woman in the crowd who was upset over California COVID and vaccination policies refused to give up the microphone. Is that it? You think a woman not giving up a microphone is indicative of civil war? Calm down. I just think we as Americans need to get our heads out of the sand and people start back being human to one another. That's all, said Pernell Cook of Livermore. We asked Rep. Swalwell about the divide and if the Capitol hearings could bring more division. Quote, it does hurt to see that Americans are so pessimistic about where we are right now that they would believe we would come to that, said Swalwell. When talking about the division in the Capitol attack, he said, to bring the country together, we need to understand just how close we came to losing our democracy. Overwhelmingly, what we see right now, I believe, is a country that wants to have their vote counted and does not endorse violence as a means of resolving disputes in politics. Swalwell is exactly why this country is falling apart. Exactly why. Experts on civil wars say the U.S. is heading toward insurgency, the 21st century version of civil war. No, it's precursor. Bleeding Kansas was insurgency. Let me tell you my opinion. I absolutely believe that I, as well as our guests on Timcast IRL, all of us contribute to the ongoing escalation that will result in some kind of civil war. I don't blame I or the majority of our guests for that being the case, and I'll explain why. January 6 was not the first instance of political violence in this country. It was not the first instance of political violence in modern history, and it was not the first instance of political violence in the last 4 years. January 6 was bad. But what do we see? The Democrats are using the weight of federal government, of law enforcement, to go after people like Peter Navarro, Jeffrey Clark, Steve Bannon. We saw Roger Stone arrested in a pre-dawn raid where CNN was tipped off. It is the Democrats that are causing this conflict. What do we see? They fund Trump-supporting candidates, Trump-endorsed candidates, while simultaneously claiming these are the people that are causing all of the problems. They claim everybody is far right. They post videos of me in their January 6 evidence trying to make it seem like I told people to go to D.C. when I said no such thing. Why? Escalation is the name of the game. Swalwell is exactly who wants this. They say things like, Tim Pool wants a civil war, when I have repeatedly said quite the opposite. Those who actively encourage this and engage in it will regret the day they did, if it ever comes. People don't know what true violence is. And if it does come to civil war, you will absolutely regret it. But they say this, because I would dare call them out, because I would dare speak as to the problems being caused by the January 6th committee, that I want it to happen. That's why I tell you it is Eric Swalwell, it is Raskin, it is Liz Cheney and Kinzinger who are causing all of this. It literally is. I'll tell you what I want. Fair play. You want to arrest and lock up all the January 6th rioters? I'm right there with you. You threw a brick, you hit a cop, you get arrested. Sorry, that's the way it works. But what about the people who trespassed, getting 2 months in jail? What about the insurrection on 5/29, when the president was forced into a bunker, when St. John's Church was set aflame, when the barricades in front of the White House were torn down by extremists? Nothing. So, I tell you this. I don't care for the rioters on January 6th, and they can go to jail for all I care. The people who trespass not knowing what was going on, I have sympathy for them, absolutely. The people who rioted in front of the White House should be charged and go to jail for all I care. But when I say something like, if you commit violence in the name of your politics, you should get arrested, that is me saying, hey, I don't take sides on that. When Swalwell, when Raskin, when the Democrats refuse to acknowledge, nay, when they defend the summer of love, you know exactly who is encouraging the violence and pushing for more. The only reason they're here during the January 6 hearings is because it is fifth generational warfare. They seek to seize the reins of power by locking up Steve Bannon and Donald Trump so they cannot win in the arena of politics. And then they scream when the arena of violence heads their direction. But it played perfectly into their hands. The Trump supporters who engaged in violence on that day have given them all of the ammunition they could have ever wanted. And that's why before January 6th, repeatedly I said, do not engage in violence. It doesn't work. They weaponized this. Even Alex Jones himself on that day over his bullhorn said, stay away. It's a trap. And it was. And now this is what they're doing. They are gutting and ripping apart this country. Here's the Washington Post. Dave Weigel. Oh, we love Dave Weigel's hypocrisy. On the campaign trail, many Republicans talk of violence. In both swing states and safe seats, GOP candidates say that liberals hate them personally and may turn rioters or a police state on the people who disobey them. Are they wrong? We saw what happened on 5/29. We saw what happened in the summer of love. Where's the accountability? Nowhere to be seen. And what about now? Lee Zeldin. Now, this man says he didn't know who Zeldin was. Lee Zeldin was campaigning, speaking on stage, when a man approached him with what's called cat ears, a self-defense tool you wear on your keychain with 2 spikes. It can be used to stab people and hurt them. They say it's a self-defense item. Regardless, it is effectively a bladed weapon. Maybe, we'll walk that down a little bit. It's not like he pulled out a buck knife or a 12-inch buck knife. No, it's cat ears. You could seriously hurt or kill somebody. He attacked Zeldin, and it seemed to have made no sense. Now, a neighbor claims the man who did was increasingly unhinged after the death of his wife. Yeah, maybe. But this is what the Democrats have done. They've radicalized these people. We saw a man try to assassinate Brett Kavanaugh only a month or so ago. Now a guy jumps up on stage. Come on, man. Yet they would say it's the GOP. The rhetoric they are using, demonizing the right, Trump supporters, people like me, of disparate political ideology, is an attempt to incite escalation, to cause violence and chaos. And it's working. I think it's what they want. All full-time police officers resign in North Carolina town to protest new progressive town manager. To be fair, I think it was like 6 cops. But this is what we're starting to see. This may be a simple act of protest. It's not the first time we've seen cops resign like this. The left's ideology is becoming pervasive. Now, good on them for resigning, I suppose, but maybe, just maybe, this woman should have been removed from office. A North Carolina town may soon be without any full-time police after the police chief and all 4 officers put in their notices of resignation. So it's 5 cops. Here's what's going to happen. They're just going to hire woke cops. And then you will have a system owned by the woke. So there you go, my friends. How long? How long do we have until it's not a resignation, but a Battle of Athens? Do you know about the Battle of Athens? A bunch of World War II vets came back, said the town was taken over by corruption, took the city over and held new elections. How long until something like that happens? Adam Kinzinger, one of the architects of the chaos that is infecting this country, the political hyperpartisanship and escalation. This man is what I would describe as evil as they come, as evil. Now, I can tell you, my friends, I am not the biggest fan of Donald Trump in his overall character. I'm a big fan of his foreign policy. I think he's one of the greatest presidents we've had. That's a fact because of what he did in North Korea when he crossed into the DMZ, over the DMZ into North Korean territory with no guards. Bold. But he's certainly not the man they paint him out to be. They've lied about him left and right. People like Kinzinger, they care only for the power of the establishment. They are the elites, the elitists. They hate the people. They want power, and they will do anything to get it. Trump? I think Trump's bumbling around. Seriously. He doesn't have a plan. Does he look like a man with a plan to you? I think there are things Trump wants, things he believes in, and I think he's quick-witted enough in business and politics to make his way there. But I don't think Trump mapped out a course of action for everything. There's some things they plan on. Everybody has some plans. What I mean is, Kinzinger is a schemer, just like all the rest of the January 6th committee. He says Republicans are in a state of disaster and Trump will be irrelevant. Are you kidding? Trump wins Turning Point straw poll by nearly 50 points. The man is about to announce he's running for office again. No, the Democrats are in disarray, and even the Democrats know it. Joe Biden's probably not going to be running. So what comes next? If Joe Biden doesn't run, who does? I don't know. There's no one. Perhaps Newsom is the best they have to offer. But how could Newsom beat Donald Trump? If Trump and the Republicans get in, what I see happening is a potential aversion to the crisis. I don't know. I say potential. It could be the catalyst for the left to scream, we won't have Trump. No, the orange man. Even though the economy was doing really well under Donald Trump. They'll scream he's a fascist, even though he's literally not. But they'll lose their minds because they're a cult, driven by the psychopaths like Rep. Adding Kinzinger, Liz Cheney, Nancy Pelosi, etc. These people are deeply elitist, evil people. You know, I didn't like to use the term evil for a while because I was a bit naive and I truly believed that everyone was trying to make the world a better place in their own way. And then you start to see the lies and the manipulations and you realize there are some people that just either want to watch the world burn or they want to steal as much fine china and silverware from the ship as it sinks before it does. That's what I see of Kinzinger. He's trying to burn it all down as he walks out. He's walking out of the building and throwing the match behind him with a smile on his face. He's not coming back into government. He doesn't care about any of this stuff. He wants to make sure it is torched as he goes. He didn't have to retire. He could have run on principle and said, I will stand by what I believe and fight to stay in office because this country needs me. No. He's like, I'm out, baby. And I'm going to burn it to the ground as I walk away. Liz Cheney, too. Now, to be fair, Liz Cheney's desperately trying to win. But she knows no one agrees with her. She is the daughter of the establishment, literally. These people are the neocons of war. They never cared about you. They never cared about the Constitution. They cared about this country as a body of power they could manipulate. The United States was once a great nation, for, of, and by the people. And then a monster emerged on Jekyll Island, to put it simply. From there, it spiraled. And it's a series of elites fighting for power to steer the ship to benefit themselves. It's why Nancy Pelosi's net worth is near $135 million or so. Why they're so wealthy in Congress, because they're allowed to bet on stocks that they vote on. And when they know a bill about some company will pass, they can buy up all the stocks. It does. The stock value goes up and they get smiles on their faces as they gut the system, extract the value from it, and watch it burn. And that's Kinzinger. That is exactly who he is. And Liz Cheney. It's Raskin. Jamie Raskin, who reps some of my employees, whose office is within 20 minutes driving distance from me, tries to lie and smear me. Lie about and smear me for power. They don't care. He didn't watch the video. Either Raskin knew he was lying about me or he was too ignorant and lazy and didn't bother to actually watch the video. In which case, I'd say he's either willfully lying about people to steal power, or he doesn't care and has no idea what he's pushing. And he is the ignorant psychopath, like so many others, burning this country down. giving IDs, giving voting power to non-citizens. Then you have no country, there's no borders. And then you have no nation, there are no shared laws. So then what? The generic ballot suggests a Republican victory and then some. But will it be enough? Because Republicans can take back the House and the Senate, but so what? Joe Biden's still in the White House. And the divide is narrowing. 538 is Republicans up 1.1 points. 1.1 points. Real Clear Politics has Republicans up 2.5. Now, that is apocalyptic for Democrats. But even if the Republicans win, what does that mean? I think that if the Republicans win in the midterms, and then in 2024, Republicans hold and Donald Trump wins the election, we may avert a real civil war. The elites and the establishment and the corrupt people like Kinzinger may finally just be stopped. And this country may return to being of, by, and for the people. An actual constitutional republic with democratic institutions. But I don't know for sure, as I always say. I really don't. What I do know is Liz Cheney is a warmonger, daughter of Halliburton. She does not represent the people. So what is she doing with any of this? She knows she won't win. Democrats are cheering for, seemingly contradicting the entirety of their political values because all they want is power. That's it. They'll claim to be the good guys, but they'll tell you Jussie Smollett was attacked. They'll tell you the Covington Catholic kids were insulting and getting in the face of a Native American. Lie, lie. They'll tell you Donald Trump engaged in a quid pro quo. Lie. When we know Jussie Smollett staged a hoax. He was convicted of it. The Covington kids were actually accosted by the veteran, not the other way around. And Donald Trump was investigating Joe Biden's quid pro quo. Fortunately, we caught all of that. But I'll tell you it all. I'll even call out Donald Trump when the State Department advertised for his own golf course, for people to stay there. When Donald Trump tried to use his Doral Golf Resort for the G7, we called it out. When Jussie Smollett lied, we called it out. Hands up, don't shoot, we called it out. So why is it that every time we call it out and it turns out to be a lie, there are people who still think we are the ones lying? Because it's a cult. It's propaganda, and people like Kinzinger, they lie to you to seize power, and it works. So we've got to push back. I'll leave it there. We've got to stand up, and by push back, I will clarify, I mean get out and vote this November. Get out and vote in your primaries. It matters. Next segment's coming up at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimcastIRL. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all then.